Bine v-am regăsit la EuroDictionar. Avem o șansă destul de rară de a sta de vorbă cu un personaj cu adevărat important în lumea filmului documentar și nu numai. Știți foarte bine că în zilele acestea la Chișinău s-a derulat Cronograf. Cronograf, un festival care a ajuns la 12-a ediție, a arătat o deschidere din ce în ce mai mare a Moldovei pentru lume și a lumii față de Moldova. Așa că dacă au venit oameni cu greutate, foarte bine. Noi am avut ocazia de a sta de vorbă cu Cristian Frei, care este unul dintre cei mai cunoscuți realizatori de documentar ai lumii în acest moment. Foarte aproape de tot ceea ce înseamnă top, respectiv distincții de vârf. Iar în acest moment el este, printre altele, și președintele Academiei Elvețiene de Film. Are un palmares important, un palmares impresionant, iar în Moldova a fost prezentat în premieră unul dintre cele mai reușite filme documentare ale sale, și anume Space Tourist, turiștii spațiali. Povestea e simplă, pe scurt, e povestea unei miliardare din Statele Unite care își vede visul cu ochii și zboară în spațiu de la Baikonur. Și în jurul acestei povești se mai construiește ceva, se construiește o istorie extraordinară a tuturor celor care în Est au visat fie să ajungă în cosmos, fie au învățat să trăiască de pe urma bucăților de diverse nave spațiale rusești care cad de jur împrejurul Baikonurului și în alte părți ale Rusiei. Poveste extrem de impresionantă și Kazahstanului, pardon, poveste extrem de impresionantă, foarte bine făcută. Dar important este să vedem cum anume s-au unit paradoxurile, pentru că nu cei din Moldova, de exemplu, își doresc să vadă un vis european împlinit aici. Pe de altă parte, cine s-ar fi gândit vreodată că miliardarii vestului își vor vedea visul cu ochii în Est și nu oriunde, dar în stația spațială controlată și gestionată de ruși în Kazahstan. Cred că e bine să vorbim cu Cristian Frei acum, dar vom vorbi în engleză. So, Mr. Frei, thank you very much for being here and accepting this interview.
Thank you.
I don't think you've understood much of my Romanian introduction.
Some words. Yes.
I try to be quite accurate with your biography and with your film that has been shown also here in Moldova, Space Tourists. Well, this is a paradox. It's a movie about a wealthy Western billionaire which actually sees the dream of her life coming true in the East. And not anywhere in the East, but in Baikonur, in the well-known ex-Soviet space city, if I may say so, space base. On the other hand, the Easterners, they dream the Western dream. Now, please tell me, in the middle of this paradox, how did you actually understand the East? You filmed in Romania, in Kazakhstan, all over the Eastern area. How do you see East? How far is it from West right now?
Well, it is indeed a paradox because space tourism is the most expensive form of tourism. And NASA, you know, the American Space Agency, is totally against it. I mean, they were totally opposed from the beginning. And NASA is like a socialist organization, somehow. You know, if I want, for example, to use some footage from outer space, I just ask and I get it for free. They are purely only for scientific reasons, you know, you can work with them and it's all public domain, everything. So they were very much opposed to space tourism. And Anousheh Ansari, the Iranian-born protagonist in my film, yes, she had to go with the good old Soyuz rocket to space. And for me, I saw a unique chance through this topic also to talk about and to find out about the Russian part, the ex-Soviet part of the space race, if you want, because the space race, I grew up with it. And it was very interesting because I didn't know so much about that part of the story. You know, I grew up with the moon landing, and unfortunately, you know, that's the part the Americans were successful, but not with the first satellite in space, you know, Sputnik, the first, you know, man in space, Gagarin, first woman, first dog, first dogs, you know, even Belka and Strelka is a fascinating story. And for me, that was really an interesting thing. And I also understand the Russians that they actually want to cover at least half of the cost of the Soyuz rocket by space tourists. And now it stopped, you know, that's also a paradox because space tourism at the moment stopped because space tourists are also, every American astronaut has to fly with the Soyuz. They have no more own, you know, space shuttle. So that's also funny, you know. I mean, if I would have told that an American like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, that they will fly with Soyuz rockets to the International Space Station, and that's actually the only, way to get there, they would have told me, yeah, you're crazy. So it's interesting, and I think history sometimes is full of paradox. And yes, Anousheh, her dream is a big dream. She's actually, she's a billionaire, okay. So, it was also for me something frightening as a documentary filmmaker at the beginning, because, she can afford so many lawyers, I'm just, a small documentary filmmaker. But her dream is beautiful, and she realized it by with the help of this beautiful rocket, which is the most successful rocket I think ever built. So you're asking about dreams. That's one dream, and I think dreams can be on different levels. I always somehow dreamed of learning from the East as a filmmaker. I'm telling you the truth. I don't have to flatter you, because I see not that we have the better level. We are third world in terms of filmmaking, for example. I always looked up to the Polish tradition in filmmaking, and to Film School Łódź, and I was jealous, somehow, even because I thought, wow, it's so professional. They have so many stories, because that's another thing,
The topics.
The topics, yeah, because, in an overprotected country like mine, everything works, everybody's happy. Where is the story, sorry, but you don't have something to say,
But on the other hand, the success story, the most envied probably country in the world, Switzerland, yes, where everything is wealthy, everything works perfectly, that might be for others in the East, for example, the perfect dream.
Absolutely, I understand that, and I don't want to be arrogant. I think I'm totally aware that I grew up and I'm living I'm spoiled, I'm living in a country where there's not only a lot of money and the salaries are really high, and there's also a middle class, which I think is also important. It's not just, the richness in general can be defined by very few very rich, and then you have the rest very poor. But we do have middle class, and people can realize themselves. If you dream of something, you have a chance. It sounds not very American, but and there's also a social net, if you want. If you are handicapped, if you have less chances, let's say by intelligence, by whatever, you are also protected. It's like a good mix between capitalism and also some, if you want, socialist ideas in it, at least, in terms of, social security.
Well, speaking about this slight touch of socialist, let's say, ideology applied into practice. Since the moment you have filmed your documentary about the space tourists and the present moment, some things have changed, geopolitically speaking, unfortunately.
Yes.
Now there is a total hostility between the Russian Federation and the Western society, starting from Ukraine and going west. Under these circumstances, and also taking in account the experience you have had with common people, ordinary people in the East, how real may still remain the possibility of some Eastern countries getting closer to the West, such as Moldova or Ukraine, for example? Is there any real chance, or the mentalities are completely separate and links could be possible only, punctual, but not on the whole?
I know not too many things about Moldova, but I know that you are so close to Romania, for example, and Romania is joining the European Union. So, I totally understand this dream, and I really think, yes, the European Union could expand, and there is this line of division between, the good ethnically, maybe, but also, of course, the old, fact that Russia always didn't really know where to belong to. Is it Europe or is it Asia? And I think that's also part of the whole thing. I love Russian language, for example. I adore it. I would like to learn it. But I'm very open, because
But what about
I have a
this?
problem with Putin's politics in terms of media, for example. There I can judge it, I think there is nothing worse than propaganda. I think, if I'm a documentary filmmaker, and documentaries are the best antidote to propaganda and to racism and to prejudices and to all kinds of phobies, homophobia, xenophobia, whatever. Because through documentaries you learn about the other people, and you learn it by feeling empathic, and you learn that we are actually so much the same, So from this point of view, I think the direction the Russian medias are going is, for me, horrible. I saw a lot, and I got a lot of translations, what they're actually doing in TV. And this is really propaganda again, like in the good old times. And
How could you somehow fight back this? As a documentary filmmaker, how would you recommend to fight this back? Because this is an absolutely acute problem in Moldova. The Russian media is very present here, and their propaganda is very effective. How could this be fought back?
Well, I'm part of that, and I don't want to now to make accusations, because, every country has the right to define itself, but I just feel strongly that, yes, the medias have to be independent. It's the force. It's really important that the politicians have somebody watching them. Look, it's very simple. Switzerland is very rich, and it's one of the less corrupt countries in the world. I was president for 3 years for the committee giving all the money to the filmmakers. Never, ever. There was even a try to approach me, you give me the money and I do blah, blah, blah.
They give you back 10%?
No way.
No way?
No, never, ever. And so all the decisions we made were really based on, it was a big task and a big responsibility, but it was based on purely artistic decisions. So it's good decisions if you want, there is nothing else. You cannot influence these committees. And I think corruption is really a poison for society.
Speaking again about Mr. Putin's administration, corruption and propaganda, are these relatives? It's linked.
Of course it's linked. Because, I don't think there is kind of a law, like that the medias have to do that and that and that. It works differently, You speak with each other and you say, listen, we would like to have this like that and that and that. And we do have fights in Switzerland too about TV, like how much should TV go into a commercial direction, like fulfilling the ketchup dreams, of people, the simple food, you know what I mean? Ketchup, everybody likes it, and not more complex food, But these fights over how the program should be, and we have actually TV stations, we have 6 of them. The way this is debated is, of course, open through media again, and all kind of people can, raise their voices and say, well, I see it that and that way, I would like to have more complex programs, and et cetera, et cetera. Corruption is a dark, dark poison, because it's everywhere, and in transparency, the result is really, I think, very bad. And I see it in many countries. And sometimes I work with corruption as a filmmaker, of course. I have to, when I'm working in Russia, for example.
You did some work in Russia.
Yeah, space tourist.
Obviously. Did you ever have the feeling that you should be afraid of something? Because some other journalists going there and trying to do some research or even film, they had the feeling that something bad could happen to them if they cross a certain line.
Yeah, probably I didn't cross this line because my films are not primarily politics, and it's not films about Anna Politkovskaya and stuff like that. So no, I was never afraid.
But those ones who make, I don't know, political or historical inquiries, should they be afraid of something? Is there something bad in the air about trying to speak out the truth in the Eastern society?
At the journalists being killed.
Boris Nemtsov, for example, as a politician, he did disappear.
I mean, it's horrible. It's absolutely horrible, you know. If you silence the media by spreading fear, then you lose as a country, as a society. You lose.
Under these circumstances,
yeah.
do you see, and I'm getting back to my primary question, do you see a real approach or possibility of a real approach between the Eastern mentality, which actually includes, unfortunately, a big percentage of corruption, and the Western society?
I was in Poland, you know, a few months ago at a beautiful and very important film festival, which is called Image. It's a film festival dedicated to the skills of the cinematographers, you know, the cameramen and women, and they're doing such a big work. So Poland, you know, for example, as far as I can tell you with my experience, they are quite close now to the Western mentality. For example, at this Image festival, all the real stars in, you know, cinematography, I mean, US Hollywood stars were present. They are coming to Poland because they're looking upwards to the skills and the tradition of Polish filmmaking, and also the program was a lot dedicated to interesting and creative big Hollywood films. So yes, Poland, for example, for me is already quite close to the West.
So Poland is a success story, to use a cliche.
Yes.
Great.
Probably.
Okay, that would be also a hope, for example, for Ukraine or Moldova,
Yeah.
which would be quite linked. Well, unfortunately, Moldova did not show, I don't know, very big performance in terms of cinematography or documentary filmmaking.
But Romania does. I mean, you have incredible successes, you know, Romanian films.
And this should help somehow Moldova. Some of the Romanian films actually were joint ventures. The Moldavian creators were there in the Romanian films. Would this be a chance? Should this work as a, I don't know, way up to some bigger ideals?
I think so. I mean, you know, I cannot judge this kind of tradition. Why isn't Moldova already joining Romania? There was a chance, it's now in history, but, you know.
I'm not really speaking about the unification right now.
Okay.
That's a political matter. But about these simple cooperations between.
I mean, there is no other way, no, than to cooperate with, for example, with the West, with Western, you know, money. And there is also projects, you know, there is, I think, interesting projects for joint ventures and to help each other. And it's also, I think, on the same eye level, you know, somehow it should not be like, you know, we're giving you just the money, because I think each party can learn from each other, you know, I think that's
It's quite, let's say, premature at the moment we make this interview to ask you this question, but let's try. Did you get any chance to see any Moldovan audiovisual opera so far, a documentary, a film?
Unfortunately not. I'm in the jury at the Chronograph Festival, but so far we haven't seen and watched any Moldovan productions, so I cannot. I know some Romanian films, and I cannot tell you the titles right now, but I watch a lot, and that's present for me, not Moldovan.
And did they catch your attention with something, your specialist eye?
Again, for me, looking east is looking up as a filmmaker, not down, because I see a lot of creative potential. And you know, let me put it in another way. If I teach filmmaking, documentary filmmaking in Western film schools, I tell them, okay, you think you are rich, you are, you know, privileged? You're not. You're poor. Because you live in an overprotected country and you're poor in stories and sometimes poor in drive, because your lives are so overprotected and you feel like a star because you're in a film school. Forget about that. And I see this hunger, I see this drive much more in Eastern countries. That's why I'm saying I'm looking up in terms of creativity, and I'm sometimes jealous of the many stories and conflict you have, because without conflict you have no film. So, you know,
Yes, that's true. That's perfectly true. Well, speaking about that, it's the second or the third time in this interview that you use the word overprotected. There is a criticism and also a propaganda line coming from the East that the West is already decadent, overprotected, artificial, with no values. How would you respond to that?
That's not true. Because, I mean, when I'm using these kind of words, I'm speaking as an artist. And yes, as an artist, you look where there is conflict, and you're a storyteller, and no story works without conflict. But one value I just described, the value of I'm absolutely convinced that the medias have to be free. I'm absolutely convinced that you have to have strong documentaries, for example, in a country. And you cannot let that to the markets only. You know, I'm not speaking about the censorship, if you want, of Discovery Channel documentaries, which are so commercial that you don't really learn anything. It's like, again, catch-up, you know, but just in a documentary way. No, I'm speaking about the value that, yes, we have subsidy systems for filmmaking. We don't leave everything to the market, to commercial, values. We think that culture has a value, and we are successful in that. I totally believe in the value of democracy. It's sometimes very, very, heavy and it's slow. You know, Switzerland was one of the last countries to introduce women's right to vote, which is embarrassing. But finally it was, a real decision of the Swiss men, at that time too. So yes, democracy has also disadvantages, but it's the best system because and also I believe in non-corruption. I believe that politicians have to be, monitored, that their power has to be limited. So yes, we have strong values and I believe in it. Even though there is a lot of mistakes in Western countries. It's not a paradise also. And of course, richness and just the fact that you have a lot of money and it also doesn't make you so happy. I mean, if you measure that, it's sometimes a paradox.
Well, it is a paradox, and probably part of your discourse right now is quite ununderstandable for those ones who live in the East, who actually wouldn't imagine life without corruption, because it's easier to get faster what you need if you simply participate to corruption. And probably they won't understand how could that be that you have a lot of money but still you're not happy.
I am happy. Many people are actually. I mean, I just want to say happiness is not something absolute. We know that it's not very, intelligent to say that, but it's true, I mean, you can be unhappy with a lot, and you can be very happy with very small amounts of whatever, security, money, whatever.
Of course, I'm trying to reduce the things right now to simple aspects because I'm trying to think of the simple peasant of a Moldavian village, for example, who wouldn't dream of a lot, but in fact he has almost nothing. And it's quite difficult to explain to him the Western dream as long as he, for years now, got used to the Eastern way of doing things. Trying to participate to a bit of corruption, getting used to live with almost nothing, have not too many dreams because they could fail, and on and on and on. How could this simple person be pushed up somehow, cheered up somehow with some good news? Because it's totally, try to be creative right now, because it's totally difficult to move his mind and to insert in his mind some images which could give him another horizon, for example. It's difficult. It's very difficult.
And I should do that? I mean, I should help to do that?
Somehow.
Whoa, that's difficult because, normally the media are not working this way around,
Try to be manipulated right now.
I don't know. I mean, documentaries are always a lot about dreams. And I always say when I'm teaching documentary filmmaker, another provocation now, that for me as a documentary filmmaker, it makes no difference at all if the film is, for example, about the President of the United States being shot in the White House, or if it is about his cleaning lady, working in the White House. Because the dreams and the life and the family and, whatever the goals of this lady is as important as the president's life and dreams for a documentary filmmaker. We don't make any difference. Now, that doesn't really answer your question, I know, but, I just want to say that, I'm not looking at the world as a documentary filmmaker through like, okay, this is prestige. Oh, wow, this guy has a fancy car and, a girlfriend with long legs. Okay, But I also like just to encounter lives which are maybe not on the privileged side, and you see so much dignity there, sometimes much more, So that, I don't know. Is this an answer? I have no idea.
It could be, because I was thinking right now about the ordinary people you have filmed going after rubbles of the spaceships.
The space debris collectors.
Exactly, in Kazakhstan. So did you see any dignity there?
Of course. And you know what the Russians did?
I don't know.
Well, I tell you. I mean, we had, investigated everything, me and my cinematographer, Peter Indegand, and we were allowed to shoot this sequence in Kazakh steppe. But 3 weeks before the launch of the rocket, the FSB people, Russian Secret Service, they told us, well, you cannot shoot it in the way you want. I mean, you're totally okay to shoot it, but not with the alcoholics. I was like, what do you mean? Well, these space debris collectors, we don't want them in the film. We want that you have to buy overalls and handkerchiefs and helmets, and we as military or FSB, we will stage the work of the space debris collectors for your film. Isn't that a nice offer? And I was like, okay, that's the end of documentary filmmaking as I understand it, because that would be like a theater, which is totally ridiculous. So I had to say, nope, no, thank you. And it took me another half a year to trick them out, and finally I succeeded, But they were talking about very, very, for me, nice and these space debris collectors, they drive with these huge Russian trucks into the steppe and they wait for rockets to fall from the sky, and they do this for living, and this is an incredible work, and I like them, and the dignity they have is in the film. So I cannot accept Russian censorship. I said no to a FSB offer, and I just did it another way.
Well, unfortunately, we came to the end of this discussion. Probably in 30 seconds, I would ask you to give us, I don't know if there is any main word which would describe your creed, your philosophy as a documentary maker. Which would be that one essential word?
Curiosity.
Curiosity.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Acesta a fost așadar Cristian Frei, cu el am purtat această discuție. Dacă n-ați apucat să vedeți acel film documentar despre care am vorbit, Turiștii Spațiali, căutați-l, vedeți-l. Iar noi ne întâlnim peste o săptămână, vedem cu cine mai stăm de vorbă. Avem câteva planuri mari, sper să ne și iasă. Nu vreau să devoalez secretul, pentru că nu ați aflat, e vorba despre curiozitate. Până data viitoare, numai bine!